Good morning, everybody. Please leave comments in the comments section. Hit like and subscribe. This is Tom and the Servant for another Raw Talk. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Steve.
So, I know like one reason I wanted to get you on is because a lot of these channels, they want to just focus on one thing. They'll only talk flat Earth, or they'll only talk politics, or they'll only talk COVID, but nobody wants to put everything together, right? And I've heard you a few times trying to bring up like other stuff, and like you kind of getting silenced. You know what I mean? When that's what I like want to do is like put all these things together and see how they all fit,
Yeah,
because I have
man.
my own ideas. So
Exactly. I mean, what's the point otherwise? I mean, we know the Earth is not a spinning ball. We don't have to say what exactly it is, but we know what it's not, and we also know that it's known that it's not a spinning ball, right? So there's a different game in play as far as I'm concerned. And let me say, I'm fucking pissed off after last night as well. If we listened to Brandon Toy's show and just completely disrespected as usual by flat earthers of all people. But like you
right,
say, people, there's channels there and people put in place to keep everybody stuck at the same fucking position. And if you vary out away from that, then you're ridiculed. So this sort of gives the game away for me anyway, because, well, what else is it about? I can only speak for myself here, and I'm on a journey to sort of find out what the fuck is going on with my life. And I've certainly incorporated everything. All the things you said you wanted to talk about have to be sort of, taken in conjunction. Otherwise, you just get stuck down one rabbit hole, and then it will lead you nowhere. So that's
Exactly.
right.
yeah.
Well, let me ask you something, Steve. With with this COVID thing going on, in like over where you're at, what if they come with a forced vaccine? How do you think your community is going to act?
Fuck it. It's an interesting one. It's Ireland is just after going into a second phase of lockdown now, right? So because it's all bollocks, we know it's all bollocks. I was saying it to a few cops the other day. They know it as well. The problem is that the people are going around sort of nearly fully masked up. So I say they will volunteer for it. They'll be almost queuing up for it, but I don't think that that's a part of the planning. I think something else is going on. And for me, myself, I hold that Corona brings enlightenment to everyone. And one thing that everyone is doing right now is to be questioning the official story, questioning what has been presented to them. And I think that that's all purposefully done as well. So I have a differing view on that. But in general, I think yeah, a certain large percentage of the population would queue up for the vaccine. They did it for the flu vaccine. Sure.
Right, right. And the reason I ask is because I feel the same way how people are going to respond in this country. You got a lot of people out there making videos saying that, the Americans won't stand for it. There's more of us than them. We'll stand up and fight. Well, all I see is people laying down and licking their nuts.
I wish I
Uh,
could do that. I wish I was that flexible.
but no, I'm not seeing anybody put up a fight. I'm
Yeah.
not.
And what about all of the riots? You think they're all the protests are they all staged and sort of populated with
Yes.
actors? Is that what you think? Yeah.
I believe that. Yes, I believe they're all set up and
Fucking hell.
planned.
So we
Yeah.
gotta we gotta work out what are the motivations of these people. And there's so many actors, and especially when we come to flat Earth here, the biggest, most bitter pill to swallow is to realize that your own side is part of it as well. So we have to ask ourselves, what are the motivations of these people? You know what I mean? Are they evil of heart that they're going against their fellow man, or is there a greater, what do you call it? Play in work in the works. You know what I mean? And I actually think there is, right? And I've spoken about this on my own channel. I say all of this is theater leading to the awakening and enlightenment of it all. Just the real truth, and maybe the wondrous truth as well. You know? Could be the horrible truth, right?
Right?
Right. Right. I mean, there's a lot of doors to that. And I think a lot of these riots, like on top of being um, staged, I think that they're actually trying to get people to participate to start a bigger riot. I think they want us to start fighting the vaccine
Right.
because they're prepared to do martial law. And I think that they're ready for both actions, right? They're ready for you to volunteer for it, and they're ready for you to fight it, but they don't want you to ignore it completely, you know?
Well,
Mm.
there's that, and I think they want to just keep the hate between people. It's always a race thing. They always make it, the black against the white or whatever. They always want to make everything racial, and that keeps your focus off what they're doing.
Mm.
Right.
I think, and I'll say this in public here as well, to people I meet, now more than ever, we're on our own in this one. There's so much information, right? And people are getting their information from different places. Everyone's going to follow a different thread. So, there's no, in one sense, it's probably a good idea to keep your mouth shut to some degree, you know what I mean? Because anything you say, you have no degree of certainty that this is the actual situation, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I've been saying that, and I think we're on our own. The best you can do is try and make some sense of this yourself. That's what I think. And I mean, I don't have from the very outset, let me tell you this, right? On my channel, I predicted a transforming event I have predicted it a few times. I have to say that as well. I've been expecting massive changes from, I think, fucking 2000 and definitely 2013 when something happened in my personal life here, which sort of spurred me on further down this road. But I've been expecting these transformations all the time, but especially 2019. I had it nailed down to Easter time 2019. And my reasoning was sound, and I knew 19 was significant. And I'll tell you, Stephen and Tom,
Yeah.
I started counting from zero. So when I worked out the 19 aspect, which is the eighth prime number, right? So when I worked that out, I started counting from zero as in the year 2000 instead of
Okay.
course, 2001. Which is where we always start counting from, was the one, and then we had that transformative event slash whatever you think of it, uh,
Right.
9/11, right?
Yep.
9/11. And so I've been expecting. I expected that last year. What happened this Easter, around this Easter time, I was expecting it last year. And from the very outset, I've been saying and thinking and holding that Corona brings enlightenment. And let me tell you, if you didn't notice, or Ona, so see or Ona is the light of heaven. So see or Ona, Corona is see the light of heaven. So that's
Oh,
my
Yeah.
optimistic bent on it.
A crown, like a crown. Yeah, and I think that it's lined up like that for a reason. I mean, everything is for a reason. Everything's named for a reason. Every symbol is for a reason. I think, and like, especially since I've been learning a lot more about like the Statue of Liberty is really Apollo or Helios or Zeus, one of the sun gods, and so it's a
Mm,
lot about sun worship. Our moon missions were Apollo missions, that went,
right.
you know, and so like I think this is culminating to, in my view, in my because I'm a subscriber of the Bible, right? And so I see it that it's like the awakening is really like the Antichrist, the fake savior of the world, right? And so for both sides, the truth is going to happen, and then
Mm.
in our story, there's a little extra, on top of that. But like, does it start with Corona or did it start with 9/11? Because I know that the reversal in transgenders was happening thousands of years, but like as far as like what was the big event that kicked it off, was it 9/11?
Man, look, uh, I'm settled
There's a
on
lot
this
of
on
meat
my
on the
own.
bone there.
I'm settled on this and I know it sounds just extraordinary, right? It can't be so. In my own head, this Earth in its current form is current broken, divided form because it is, and I think it's pertinent. You have to understand that Earth is in a divided state, and then that reflects on our own divided state. But I say it's 422 years old this year. And that's mad to say that. It is absolutely
Yeah.
mad. But there is a train of thought which lead me there, and to consider that, I guess I'm on my own in that. So the
well,
way I look at it all, it's a construct, right? And everything. So when you talk about 9/11 or any sort of transformative event, well, it's all scripted from the outset. So 9/11 was sort of the culmination, the turning point. At this venture, at this point, um, this was the beginning of the end. That's the way I look upon it, or the
well,
return to the beginning again, maybe.
Well, let me ask you something, Pete. I have no problem with what you just said there, but
Really?
what goes no? Because I mean I go back to even I go back as far as our first president George Washington. That's people don't realize who he was and what he
Right,
was. But when
right,
you go back 422 years, that you
right. Hang on there.
sure,
Will you repeat? Yeah, will you
but
repeat that, please?
yeah,
Did my
what
computer
happened?
just flash there?
What event
Sorry.
was 422 years
Yeah.
ago, Pete?
Okay, well, so not to get too deep into it, right? This is where
Right.
the dodo, the story of the non-existent dodo, as you see my avatar here. So the dodo bird never existed, first of all. So when we arrive on flat Earth, a certain map is handed to us, which is the Gleason's map. When it's rotated around, everything is inverted. We're handed it with Australia at the top. And remember, all the flat Earth, the main flat Earth people, Mark Sargent, Patricia Steer, Antonio Subaretz, Bob Nodal, Jaron, all the guys, they all had the Gleason's map. You remember it in the background? So they're
Yep.
sort of paraded behind you. But Australia was always at the top. So I already learned that we're always encouraged to invert everything and look at things from the back to the front or from the bottom to the top. When you do that, then a certain bird jumps out, and that's the dodo bird. So when we look into the story of the dodo bird, knowing that the bird didn't exist, everything associated with the story is sort of symbolic and it's telling in one way or another, associated with flat Earth. So just to cut it short, my synopsis is that the dodo bird represents the changing face of the land, right? Post destruction. Post destruction of what? That's a different story. I say that's the tree of life. So the dodo bird leads to Aristarchus, the divided tree of life. But ultimately, yeah, for Dodebert discovered this flat Earth in 1598. When
Okay.
we look into historical timelines, right, a very interesting character emerges called Nico Haupt. Nico Haupt was the first no-planer from 9/11. Now, I think, are we all on board that 9/11 was a media and a victim
Yep.
symbolic hoax?
Yep.
Yes,
Excellent.
we did that. It was intentional. Yes.
Excellent. I mean, we were always meant to figure this, we'll make our way through it as well. Donald Rumsfeld picking up pieces of a plane on the on the road on the day. Come on, you know what I mean? The only question I had a few years ago was how many bottles of talcum powder were used on 9/11. But it's very interesting, and I don't know anyone else who's talking along the same lines as I am. Of course, people are making different connections, but well, the movie we saw on 9/11, a 102-minute movie, was pre-prepared in advance, right? So what went on the day is a magic trick. So the buildings came down safely behind the scenes. But the 102-minute movie, every movie has a soundtrack. Kid A by Radiohead is the soundtrack, and here's the connection here. It turns out that the lead singer of Radiohead, Tom York of New York, Tom York, well, his nickname is the Dodo, right? So little connections there, and there's lots of other connections like that. But ultimately, Nico Haupt, the original no planer on 9/11, here we are in the arena where we're talking about it, is Earth a plane or not a plane? But he, uh, not to, it's a very, I could talk for hours in this, as you know, Stephen, and maybe
Right.
not
Right.
for Tom,
Yeah.
but I have spoken for hours in this, on my own channel. But he went on, first of all, I came across him in the Flat Earth Society forums in 2011, and he was talking about flat Earth and sort of beyond. And then he went on. This is the point. He went on to do a body of work, a tonal work called Google 1649. It's literally, if you want to search it out, just in inverted commas, put Google 1649. And basically, the premise is that in spite of his extensive search, right, earthwide, he hasn't been able to find any primary source material which predates 1649. So that's why he called it 1649. So you see how everything is sort of connecting in one sense.
So why? So
Go
why
on,
do
yeah.
you think? So why do you think that it's 420 years? Because nothing goes beyond that. Nothing goes before that, or
No, there's a different. So Earth was intact before that. That's the way I look at it is the tree is cut. So the other side, so if we go down through the north center, everything's intact on the other side. That's just the best way I can sort of imagine it. So before that, a different reality was in place. But let me just say this as well. I view it because all we can vouch for is our own lifetime here, right? I view it all as
right?
a construct. I view it all as a construct. We came away from material only existence, which, by the way, a character, a historical character who didn't exist, right, on storytelling,
Yeah.
called Aristarchus of Samos, is credited as the originator of heliocentrism, which is a base for material-only thinking,
And so
existence,
he's
which
completely
culminates in the
he's
Big Bang.
and so he's completely created, like just
Exactly,
conjured out
exactly.
of nothing. Aristarchus never existed. He's just
Right.
credited with.
I've heard that before. Yeah.
But
Okay.
the point is, once we look at everything given to us in the form of letters, numbers, narratives, etc., they're all
Gematria.
encoded. They're all exactly. They're all
Yeah.
encoded. There's a
Right.
greater story there to be unraveled. And this is what like some Mark Sargent and his clues. Most people miss Mark Sargent's real clues. One of them was he was a prepper. So we have Mark Sargent Prepper, which is a reference to Alice. Sorry, reference to
So it does all
Sergeant Pepper's
connect.
Lonely Hearts Club
Like
Band, right?
Right. The
so
Beatles.
so so let me
Which
ask
was a
you
reference
this.
to Alice in Wonderland. I'll just get in as
Oh,
well.
oh yeah, sorry, yeah. Let me let
Yeah,
you finish.
let me just say with Mark Sergeant Prep. So here's the point: Mark Sergeant Prepper, reference to could be listed as the most famous album in history, I guess. But that's a walk through Alice in Wonderland, and in chapter 3 of Alice in Wonderland, we meet the dodo after Alice's tears, and the dodo is seeking dry land. Very
Right.
interesting. And after they arrive on land, then they get involved in a Caucus race. So all very encoded. Right?
So basically, okay, so you're kind of going on like almost like a gematria type decipher, right? But like in
Well,
words, right? In the
yeah,
word, the
yeah,
actual, instead of numbers. And I've seen like gematria, like predict, I guess even a little bit into the future and predict what's happening. Like so I know that like we're definitely in a created narrative that has an ending already, and we're somehow in it, right? And the reason why we can uncode it is because it is already created.
right.
It already has a direction, it already has an ending, it already. So we're even though we're living it, it's over, right? So that's why I think that you can actually code things to find things out. You know what I mean? Like I
Exactly,
think
man.
that. Right, right, right. And I think English was probably created, right? If it wasn't one of the 70 languages, right, from the Tower of Babel, in my opinion, right, then
Right.
it was created to form these little codes and stuff,
Exactly, man.
like
Exactly.
a like a spell language,
Exactly. This has been my position for the longest of times now. The English language was created almost whole cloth. This character Shakespeare is credited officially as adding half again to the number of words in the English language. Shakespeare never existed. We
Right.
went over Francis Bacon and Dr. John Dee being credited, in the conspiracy world anyway, as the authors. But I think there's more to the story as well as deeper layers. These characters probably didn't exist either, right? I
Right.
say the hidden hand is behind everything, and I hold, right, that the
Sure.
same
Yeah.
hand that wrote the works of Shakespeare wrote the Bible as well. It's all part of a construct. It's all part of a
Well, see,
construct. And
that's where I disagree. That's where I
okay,
disagree. I think everything is exactly the way you're saying it, right? Already created, already coded.
yeah,
There's ways to uncode it, right? Because it has to be at that top level for the adversary to do that, right? But
okay,
but where I disagree is that I think the Bible exists outside of that because the creation came first. Then the Bible was written over the creation.
yeah. I
The
mean,
creation
look,
creation was done beginning to end, right? You know?
look, as I said at the start,
Yeah.
some of the stuff I talk about, I'm
Yeah,
just
it's a little
completely
different.
speaking about it myself. There's no one else. I'm not looking
Yes.
for any support from anyone. Just
Oh,
expressing
I
my
get it.
thoughts on it.
I get it. I get it. I get it.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
but whatever the story is, anyway, we know there's a greater hand in play.
Right.
And I view it as a treasure hunt. When people ask me, listen, my mirrored water layer over an extended span, when flat Earth was given, so much is obvious in the sense when we're given back the extended span. So when we're looking out over an extended span of water, the boiler will tell you that what looks like the horizon there is actually the horizon. Everything's dropping away after that. When
Right.
we,
Slow down a little bit, Pete. Slow down a little bit, Pete, so I
okay,
can understand you a little better.
Okay,
So
am I
that
speaking? Am I speaking too
yeah.
fast? This is completely unnatural setting, isn't it?
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. Just go a little slow.
Remember, we're Americans. We're lazy. We need everything slowed down, Pete.
And listen, that's my own it's a fucking reaction as well. Because anywhere else I talk, right? If you listen to the Brandon Toy show last night, for asking a few simple, pertinent questions, I'm fucking shot down and thrown under the bus by fucking Ranty the Snake, who's an actor agent from the start. These people are all actor agents who will keep you at a
So
limited
hey,
part.
so
But
which
I'm
ones?
sorry.
Which Pete? Which ones are are connected? I know it's like Ranty and Nathan, and it's
Yeah,
Jeranism, and it's Nodal. Are they like a cult, or are they like a? Are they like a government agency? Like how are they connected? You know?
they're all connected. They're part of the greater, so I call it the Patokli crew, right? So you have the potato crew in America and all their core members, and then you have the British aspect of that, which is the Oakley crew. So they're all sort of connected. Are the government agents? They have to be. They're all involved in some way. I view them ultimately as clue givers. Clue givers, so
Right.
educators in a sense. They're limited in terms of how far they'll go. Look, Nathan Oakley is a perfect example of that. Look at how happy and passionate the man is to go over the same fucking thing again and again with people who have been
Right,
proven liars, proven
right.
liars time and time again. So there's something else going on, and that's the point here. I view it like you do in a sense, Stephen, like a game of a treasure hunt. Yeah. So there's a prize to be found at the end of it, which is knowledge, I guess, awareness of a self
Right.
and relation to what the greater power here, the greater story. And let me say, when you talk about gematria, or however you want to pronounce it, yes, all is number. All is number when we understand, we get it down to basic. Remember, I mentioned Aristarchus, Samus. He was the originator of again, he didn't exist, so he's credited as being the originator of heliocentrism, which is a greater materialism sort of bound philosophy, I guess, which fundamentally denies the zero. So therefore, everything is countable, everything is material, everything is particulate.
Ah,
When we come
start
away
with a
from that,
zero.
then we reintroduce the zero, and this is where we have the one and the zero, the binary. Let me tell you this: you've heard often the question, or sorry, the ultimate answer to the life, the universe, and everything is 42. I say the question is, what do you get when you divide zero by one? It's very simple, but we have to come to flat Earth and away from the material only thinking, right? But if I give you a brief explanation as to why that works, it works for me anyway. Zero and one, when you think of a circle, you have the relationship between the circumference and the diameter. So three significant three is the magic number. That is 3.14 to 1. In mathematical instruction, a dot signifies
That's
multiplication.
pi.
So when you multiply
Well,
3 by
that's
14, you
that's
get
cl-
42.
so that's close to pi, right? You
Exactly,
went
man.
from the okay, so it's not exactly pi, but it's close to pi, right?
Right.
Three point one
Right.
four one five nine two. So you're like 3.142
Well, it's
divided.
the three significant figures is the point. The three,
Oh,
three.
I get it. 3.14. I get it. I get
Yeah,
it.
that's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the.
Well, let
So
me
All
ask
right.
you
again,
something, Pete.
yeah,
Just getting back to the movie things. Now, I can see and decode a little bit of stuff in movies, but not in great detail. Like Nicholson,
yeah.
1968, like you can, that Kamani Ajari or whatever his name is. Who that guy's really good. What can a guy do to help learn to decode and see these things? Just like if people don't know the true meaning of Wizard of Oz, you know what I mean? But is there anything or any how you can learn to decode and see stuff better?
Simplify everything. And I'm not saying I have any answers, man. Come on, I'm not like up here going. I've learned all of the different. No, I've
But you can see
certainly.
stuff. You see stuff. I know when someone sees stuff because I
Yep.
Look,
can a little bit. You know what I mean?
okay.
But not on a deep level. I mean, I believe
Well,
that's
what? Let me tell you
movies are
this,
there
right?
to.
Another funny connection. Michael Jackson, with the Jackson Five, talked about one of their songs. Anyway, it's as easy as ABC 1, 2, 3, right? So when we bring it back down to basics and look at these basic symbols that are presented to us and what they represent, because remember, every symbol represents an idea, right? So an aspect of truth. Someone's at the door there. You're okay, but Michael Jackson, faked his dead clearly, right? But
Yeah.
funny enough, he returned as the five alive dodo. Would you believe that? Would you believe that? If you don't, you just
What?
type that into YouTube, and you'll get a few videos coming up on another series of clues. But that's a different matter. When it comes to the numbers and the letters chosen to represent the words and etc. Well, yeah, you look at the construction of it, and we're told at the very outset we are human. H, human. So H has a very significant role to play in all of this, and it's the eighth letter as well. So when we look at the construction of the H, you have the two divided pillars, right, connected by the cross bridge. So what we need to do is to bring the two divided together and raise the crossbar, resurrect, right? So when we do that with the H, you get the T,
Wow.
the capital T, right?
Slow
And
down, Pete. Slow down, Pete. This is good.
capital T next to capital T is pi, actually, right? But if you
Yeah.
could bring the H the other way, if you bring the two crossbars together, or sorry, the two pillars together and the crossbar downwards, but then you get the L. So we go from H to L via the E, which is the whole E, right? So we're divided in two aspects. That's hell. That's the real hell, the material, right? So
Hey, what am I
that's.
looking up? The dodo? What is it? Michael Jackson?
Do you want me to? Yeah, just type in Michael Jackson, Five Alive Dodo.
Michael Jackson, Five Alive Dodo. So you got to slow down, Pete, because this is good stuff. I'm
It's
missing
very
some of
good
it because
stuff. Very
you're
good
so
stuff.
you're so good, man. I just like if you would just slow down, dude, that would be
I know, man. I'm
freaking
sorry about
awesome.
that. I'm
No,
sorry
no,
about
no, don't
that. I've been
apologize.
over this. The problem is I've
It,
been over this for so many times, and I feel
you'll,
like I'm sort of boring people, or I'm going to be interrupted at any minute, so I have to get it all out.
No, you're
no,
not
no,
boring
no.
us at all. We really enjoy
No,
it. I know I am.
yeah,
Okay.
because there's not very many people that will talk about everything,
Um, well,
Like
let me
they
tell
get a
you.
limited part.
Let me tell you one of my. I've made some fantastic discoveries. I really have. My Milky Way on the Moon find killed all of astrophysics. I know it. I know it because now we know we're not looking at solid bodies. We're looking at a reflective sky rather than a reflection of something. When we look at the moon and the sun being the same size, the obvious thing is a
Yes.
one is a reflection. What's the mitigating factor? Well, the contour of the barrier itself. But let me just say this: one of my fantastic finds was that Paul slash fall of the Beatles is also the dodo. The reason why the replacement was made was to signify this sort of duality, and this gets back into the transgender stuff as well. And just back to our true nature, Stephen, is where I think it all goes. It's our story being told throughout, it's our story, no one else's.
Yeah.
Was the first Paul McCartney actually killed? Like I always thought he was
No,
killed in a car accident. A car hit him.
no.
But I knew the Paul McCartney now was the fake one. Was he
Right.
wasn't the original. I knew that.
No, the other guy wasn't killed at all. It's all scripted, man. It's all. Again, there's a deeper script, and oh man, if I was to tell you, it's on screen, right? I don't know if you remember Sheeps and Neeps, which was a Des, a Scottish guy who used to do a regular sort of flat Earth hangouts. But man,
Sheeps
I
and leaves.
say I didn't even know there was. I didn't know there was a treasure lost and being sought, and I'd already found it, right? I already found it, but yeah, we found, I would say, one of the most significant treasures, I would say, in history. I would have to say that, I really would, and that is the missing plate from Alice in Wonderland. I'd have to go into Alice in Wonderland as well. Remember, the Bible is 72 books or 66 books, right? And many more
Yep.
books that are left out. The works of
Yeah.
Shakespeare, also a big collection of books. The top three, at least in some lists anyway, most translated books earthwide: the Bible, Works of Shakespeare, and Alice in Wonderland, Alice Through the Looking Glass. So that's two
Mhm.
books in relation to 66 books of the Bible and many other books of Shakespeare. I have read all the works of Shakespeare, actually. Oh well, all the plays anyway. I recommend it to everyone because it's
Yeah.
fantastic stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, when we take Alice in Wonderland, then in that context, it almost becomes the most significant book for book there is, right? So when you
Really?
find out, yeah, absolutely, man. This is why, Aleister Crowley, Aleister
So
Yes.
Crowley,
right.
yeah,
So
these
we've so
characters, these characters are all fabricate. There's nothing to be afraid of. They're all truth
Right.
givers. It's like for the light-hearted. Oh, he's the wickedest man in history. I'm not going to go near there. Well, if you just get beyond that, then you'll understand it's all encoded. It's all clue pointers for us. And
Right.
he made it compulsory. So in the clue for us, he made it compulsory for all of his students to know Alice in Wonderland as through Looking Glass, inside out and upside down. But let me just make the point about Des Sheeps and Neeps, who apparently passed on. Now, I have my doubts whether he was genuine in the first place. Or no, he wasn't genuine, but whether he passed on or not, I'm
Yeah,
not sure. But
YouTuber.
anyway,
Same thing with like Tiger Dan too, right? Like,
yeah, the mind, yeah.
yeah, he was fake, from the very beginning,
Right,
And all
yeah.
these guys, IPS, everybody, right?
It is, and you learn more by what people won't talk about, or about than what they will do. But the reason I mentioned Des IPS or Des Sheeps and Neeps is because it was on his Hangout that because he's very good at looking up in the background, like whereas I'm shit at that. I'm a terrible researcher in the sense that if I find something, I just sort of move on from there. It's the same with songwriting here. Fucking loads of
Right.
songs written over the years, and all I do is when the minute I finish it, just have the basics in mind, then I just move on. You know what I mean? And leave it there. But he realized, or he found an article talking about this lost treasure, which. I see. This is what I'm saying. I don't want to take up all the talking as well, and I know
No,
this can
No,
get
take
do
it.
it.
loud.
Take all the time you want, Pete.
Okay,
We're
let me say why this was a treasure then. So, out of the 92 etchings, right? There was 92 etchings for the original Alice in Wonderland in great detail, right? But as the story goes, to accommodate for mass sort of publication, they transferred the etchings from the original wood onto metal to just facilitate greater numbers, right? So it turns out of the original etchings, all were lost, and then all were refound except one. So to this day, all graphics from all of the books of Alice Wonderland printed earthwide are printed from the original etchings, except one of them. So one of them couldn't be found, and it turns out that that one etching that couldn't be found was, well, in chapter three, Alice and the Dodo. And the problem was, right, when they transferred the etchings from the wood to the metal, they lost some of the clarity, right? So all of the representations of that particular action, chapter three with Alice and the Dodo, lack a certain clarity. And it turns out there's just something else in play here. When I decided to read Alice in Wonderland in my Hangout about 3 or 4 years ago, one of the first links I just did a Google search for the book. One of the first links that came up, I liked it, which was the Sabian.org. And it turns out that that particular link was the only one that featured this high definition dodo encounter with Alice in Wonderland. And all of the rest of the representations didn't feature the same quality. Here's the point: underneath the dodo's wing in this representation, there's a particular face, right, which isn't to be found in any of the rest of the copies. And this is the missing print that was found because if you won't believe it, because you'll go, how can that fucking work? The face underneath the dodo's wing from the original etching, which they say is from the 1850s or something, features the face of Paul slash Paul McCartney of the Beatles. Now,
wow.
Wow.
work your brain around that. So they built the whole band. So remember, as you were saying, Stephen, the story's written from the start. This was a
Yeah.
continuation. Every man plays
All
his
the way to
part.
the end. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. And that was my find, and I still say it's one of the greatest treasures relocated because it connects everything. Then Paul becomes the dodo slash Fall becomes the dodo. Who are the band members of? Remember, the dodo represents the changing face of the land. Fool on the hill sees the world. What song?
Right. Fool on the hill sees the world going round. But
Yes,
in your
yeah,
mind,
yeah,
like yeah, we're spinning
yeah. You
round
know,
and round. Yeah, yeah. It's all
everything.
about flat Earth. It's all
Right,
about the seeing the sun set.
right.
And
And well,
that's
there is.
great, and it's crazy. Like to me, it's crazy. Like something has to be true, right? I mean, if you think of life that way, right, and everything, and I think everything is significant. Every movie, every sound, every breath, everything is significant because
Absolutely.
this is such an intricate creation, right? From the beginning to the end, there has
Yeah.
to be one truth out of it. You don't think? Like,
Yes, yes, I do, and I
you
think
know,
all things point to one thing, right? But I was just going to say, if you remember Paul McCartney's band members, we have John Lennon, who's a sort of Jesus-like character, but we have George Harrison is the most significant character of the Beatles, right? And we have Ringo Starr, R.I. Son Star, R.I. R.I. Starkus is in there. So the dodo representing the changing face of the land, right? The tree of life was cut. So our divided state, the external divided state and the internal divided state came into play. And Paul slash Fall is the dodo, and dodo came about because of the destruction of the tree of life, R.S. Starkus. So that's encoded into the Beatles' uh, uh, band name, right? Band member's name.
Yeah.
George Harrison,
Yeah.
as I said, is the most significant one of them. Here Comes the Sun, author, but he also has no middle name. That's
Oh wow.
funny to me now, but it's so that
But
all of
then,
these
but
different
then,
connections.
but then, when Michael Jackson comes back as the dodo, what is that now? What does that represent? Because from
Right.
Paul to Mike, yeah.
Remember the connection between Paul uh, slash Fall and Michael
Oh,
Jackson?
that's right. They did videos together.
Right, and one even brought up the Beatles catalog,
That's
and there was
right.
major
He owns all
enmity
the
between
music.
them.
Yes.
So it's like passing the
Wow.
baton.
This
It's like
world
passing
is
the
so.
baton, right?
But think about this. If everything in the story is this complicated and this connected and this intricate, how intricate and complicated are we as thinking creatures? That is going to be. There's
Excellent.
absolutely no. There's something remarkable invented everything. Know what I
And I
mean?
often say that you have to differentiate between the story and the storyteller.
Wow,
Right?
everything's connected.
Of course it
Everything,
is.
every variable. And the more variables you consider, the better off you'll be, especially if you
Right.
know that it's created from the beginning to end narrative.
Now you have it, man. And this is what the pyramid is about in a sense.
Wow.
If you think about the steps of a pyramid, Stephen, right? The further you climb up, less effort it takes to look around, right? So as you get to the very top, then you can see 360 degrees with just one turn, right? Instead of having to walk around the
Wow.
perimeter. So yeah, and as this is what I find, I know there's a greater power in play, right? So, but yeah, as you sort of piece things together and realize there's an interconnection between everything, and you have the proper context. It's all about the proper context. I'm not a fucking smart
Well,
man. I'm
well,
not a smart
sure,
man.
yeah. I mean,
But
some
once you
things
have the
are,
proper context, right? Flat Earth
yeah,
provided that as well.
yeah. Well, I
But
mean,
yeah,
I mean, some things are obviously symbolic and obviously allegory, you know. Not everything's completely literal, right? But like those things would be obvious, right? Like you would know that someone's being allegorical or symbolic in that statement or whatever, you know. But it's what's
well,
weird about creation being that complicated, the story, and just us as a creation being probably, I mean, magnitudes more complicated. Like that's just amazing, man. Like to me, I can't get over that. I can't get over that. You
well,
know. And then okay, so let's say the one truth is putting both sides together, light and dark, up and down, whatever, right? And then that leads to like the awakening, right? The occult side of it, right? And then if you read the Bible as like for the spirit of at least for the spirit of the story, right? With Jesus being the hero, saves us all, right? Uh, Having that be literal leads up to the equal and opposite side, right? Could it
well,
be? I mean,
you tell me, Stephen. I mean, again, it's
I think so.
ultimately, yeah, but it's ultimately down to the
I
individual. You
believe
see,
that. Yeah.
or I might, or anyone might have a certain context for your thinking all your life, and suddenly then you hear something somewhere, and that context just turns a slight bit and alters everything. It puts everything into a different uh, sort of
Yeah.
panorama, right? But I'm not saying that. I don't know where you're at. I hold that the Bible is true, like yourself, but just not in the literal way, because I say that can't work because you're still crafting a picture. If you're attaching a sort of historic significance, you're still crafting a picture in your own
Oh,
brain.
right,
So in
right.
a sense, In a sense,
Yeah.
you could be right and you could be wrong. And I think there's more certainty in all of this. This is our story. So I think everything needs must applies to us. And let me just say this, where the transgender stuff comes in, I hold we're still in Genesis 1, my friend, where everything is
Right.
perfect. We ventured into Genesis 2, into this divided state of being. For what? We're either forced here or we consent to doing it. And I guess you choose. But that's my ultimate position. I hold myself here as being, I literally know it as well, a divided state. Male, my female counterpart literally is torn away from me, like they tell us in Genesis 2, right? So I
Mm.
say that's a
They
literal
become
thing.
one flesh. Yeah.
I think what we have to do is to look at our bodies, right? Actually, here's a good. I'm gonna. Here's a good exercise for you. Stand in front of the mirror, a long mirror, and look at yourself and imagine your reflection walking out of the mirror and sort of melding with you. What's the best? Um, what's the best arrangement, I guess, that could have ye two as one, you and your mirror, right? And I think when you do that, if you look at our backs, Stephen, look at our shoulder blades. We have wings, man. We have wings, but we are divided. And I think the ultimate thing is to understand this division, to work towards reunification, and understanding that that reunification can come from the self, from within. And this is
Right.
where the body of Christ comes into it. This is where our vital fluids, our tar, our semen, comes into it. Our penis
Everything.
is torn out of us. Think about it. The penis and the vagina, the male and female reproductive
Organs.
parts, they're
Yeah.
inversions of one another, right?
Right. Yeah.
One
That's
is
right.
torn from it. So you have a broken
Oh,
circuit.
okay. Okay.
You have a broken
Well, I mean, the
circuit, and
woman.
from our spine. Let me just. We were talking about words earlier on. Pineal, spine, penis. That goes all the way down. There's a broken circuit there, and it
Oh, I
needs to be
get it. It's a connection
repaired.
there.
Needs to be repaired, man.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then,
we were meant to find a mate and come together as one flesh, and woman was made out of man. I mean, obviously there we were split from each other, but
yeah,
I don't, we have the story in the Bible, but we don't know that's exactly how it went, I mean, I like to think that's it because I don't have another answer, and so in my life I need something to be true, right? It has to be, and so I go with the thing that stands up
right.
to the most scrutiny, and I do believe like man did come out of woman. That's I mean, woman came out of man. That's a fact,
Yeah.
it has to be,
Well, I mean,
because it's
are we in
we're
Genesis
inherited.
1? Would you agree that
Yeah.
Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 are different stories?
No,
I think no, no, no. As far as like he created he them, I think it's the same story, but like, but like
elaborated on
yeah, yeah, yeah,
in much more
yeah.
detail.
Yeah. I get that. I get that, and I have heard that defense from many of the Bible literalists here. Then they sort of need it to be that way. I don't need anything to be anyway. When you look at it in a
Okay.
different light, they are different stories fundamentally. And we even have the transition from the two, Genesis 1 into Genesis 2, and God into Lord God. In Genesis 1, we are created in the image of God, male and female
Well,
created
the
in them.
Bible,
I
but
think
the Bible is written.
in commas, hang on, Stephen. In commas, I think we're supposed to say within one, so male and female within one, because God is indivisible, and suddenly then we're divided in Genesis 2. Sorry, Stephen.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah, okay, yes, we are divide. Okay, we are separated from each other, and we are meant to be together. Like, I mean that's the design. But the original Bible was written in Hebrew, so I mean Genesis was written in Hebrew. So like obviously like our words aren't going to be the same. Their words have like picture meanings. Each one has a picture meaning. And so like to take it more literally is being on the safe side, Like I think. You know what I mean? But I
Well,
guess what you're saying is it's two different stories, two different transition periods, more detail. But it could be that the first story was told, and then those are the same characters from the first story.
well, look, and again, it's for a deeper
Possible.
conversation, and it's
Oh
just a
yeah, yeah,
personal perspective,
yeah.
a personal
That
take
can
on
go
that.
along. Yeah, we could talk forever on that.
Yeah, and
If
I
you
think as we go along, just personally, we have to have some sort of benchmarks that we'll stand upon. Like flat Earth is a massive sort of
yeah,
foundational
yeah,
aspect of things.
we have to agree there.
Right.
We anybody that's not a flat earther now, like I'm almost at the point where, like I think of them as just they're not telling me the truth. You know, I mean, because they're starting with that the very simple preference. You know, I mean, I give people credit for not knowing yet, but I also know when some people have probably been approached with it and they're just not going with it. And so to me, how am I supposed to trust anything they say, you know?
Or if they've
Yeah.
been approached with it and just are too dumb or too blind or too lazy to go research it. That's what I don't understand. I
Yeah, and
mean, anybody you
that's even
talk
worse.
to and and show them evidence, with anything, there's just tons of it. That at least that we don't spin. We're not flying through space, and they just won't
Yeah.
even take a 5 minutes to look at it. I want nothing to do with you
Yeah.
after that point.
I mean, if you take a pendulum, right? A pendulum with a heavy weight and a real thin line, right? You know, and you put it on your desk, right? It will stay still for 8 freaking years. You know what I mean? Like how could you believe that once someone comes to you with the information and tells you all the motions that we're actually making, 11 vectors, 4 orbital motions, right? That how could that pendulum stay still? That's impossible.
Or
Right.
how can a plane land on a north or south,
Yeah.
facing runway? You couldn't.
Yeah, it's
You could not
ridiculous.
do it.
And
I think that it's more to it. I think that it's almost like a spell because it is so ridiculous and obvious now. But when I was thinking about it, it sounded brilliant and sounded great to me, you know. And then the more and more I got out of started thinking with a correct worldview of where I'm at, right now it seems just preposterous if you said that we're flying around on a water ball, right? But when I was in the story, I had to be broken out of some kind of stronger than because none of that information is reasonable to begin with, you know. So
and
obviously we're
yeah,
under a
well,
spell or something.
and that's it. And this is what I just constantly say and think anyway. This spinning ball Earth is metaphor. So rather than through, we're always meant to see through the literal. But when it comes to reality, we know something moves. And let me tell you this: if you were to, my most succinct and concise answer, if you ask me what Earth is, I would say it's a spinning ball.
Right.
Swear I would. I swear I would because at the Earth's surface
In
we live on
spirit.
is flat. The Earth's surface we live on is flat and stationary. But I hold that. I remember I was talking about what's going on. The tree is intact on the other side. You always look like an eyeball if you think about it. And we're sort of living on the
Kinda.
flat top. So something is spinning, and that's the core of Earth itself is spinning, which gives us all of the skylights, all of the tidal movements, all of the weather patterns, because it's an enclosed system. But above us, right? I say in my own thinking, they tell us 60 miles high is the Kármán line. And I say that's the highest point along the outer barrier equatorial areas, right? Which the barrier contours to low north and south. And then you have an inner barrier as well. So, when you talk about a span of thousands of miles with a height like this, 60 miles up or 100 miles even maybe, well, that's a tiny sort of fraction. And that's what I say, an eyeball Earth is
Right.
a good picture for me.
I got a good
This,
question for you, Pete.
Mm.
Okay, now I've taken a picture of the moon here, and at the same time, a lady in Australia took a picture of the
Right.
moon. But here's my question, and I've never asked this to anybody.
Go on.
How I can see how we're seeing the same moon because we're on a flat plane, okay?
Yeah.
But why isn't the size different? Well, how can that be at such a distance away? I can't,
Yeah.
see it in my mind. I'm trying to understand that.
Well, it's all about scale. Oh, yeah, okay. It's very interesting. It's all about sort of scale. When we go above the ground, we think in terms of 60 miles along the ground and how far it would take us and all that. So we're sort of encapsulated within this mental, ground based, I guess, thinking, you know what I mean? But when we get up above, then distances sort of fade and what do you call it? Actually, hang on. That's probably a secondary line. The primary line, in my thinking, would be that just like a planetarium, like Mark Sargent told us, you have a central projection from the ground upwards against a mirror-like reflective surface at top of certain contour. So I think from the point of view of a little ant on the ground, everything will appear the same size. You know what I mean, or roughly the same size. It's not going to be that much variation because it's you have a central projection and everything is so up close and personal as opposed to the infinite universe, right? So I think it involves sort of wrapping your brain around a few different, or moving away from a few different thought processes, I guess. But that's the way I think of it. And look, I'm only speaking. I don't know anyone else who's saying that the sun and the moon are reflections. I don't know anyone else who's saying that all the craters on the moon are one crater, just a kaleidoscopic sort of expression of it. So I think, yeah, because we're dealing with reflections, ultimately all skylights are a reflection of one thing, then that, and they're observer dependent reflections as well, then that might go somewhat to explaining why we see everything in the same size, from Australia
Okay.
to Ireland, all the way around the world. And that's the shitty answer. That's fucking, that
Right,
didn't
but
give
I
you
mean,
any.
but because I mean, it may be a shitty answer, but it's the only one that makes sense that I've
Well, that's
heard.
Right.
good. That's good. I didn't mean it's a shitty answer. I just didn't
No, I know what you're
articulate
saying.
it well enough.
I
Yeah.
I just always thought that if it's the same distance from the ground to the to where it is in the sky, that the variation won't be that much different as far as distance from, like, lateral distance, It matters how far it is from the ground. And then you have a central point at it. Because wherever you go, it seems like the moon's following you.
Right.
So you have your own view of the moon, and another
Right.
person has their view of the moon, and it's not necessarily the same or in the same spot.
Well, well, okay. So I say they're all observer-dependent reflections, but we are
Right,
all
right.
looking at the same exact sort of center point of reflection. So as the sun comes up for you in America now, as you spot it, and as I look at the sun here in Ireland, we are fundamentally looking at the same point of reflection, right? Even though we see it differently, and we all agree as well, though, that these
Oh,
skylights appear to be right there, right? So almost within touching distance sometimes.
right, right. Very close, very close.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
So reflective sky makes the best sense to me, and it's sort of yeah, it
Because
explains
if
why
I
we
could
don't have.
walk, if I could walk away from the Polaris and it drops behind the horizon at some point, that's obviously very close. Because if it's the same
Right.
thing when I walk away from the top of a building and it goes down, the same thing with the stars. So it can't be very far. It can't be more than 100 miles. You
Yeah,
know, you
that's what I
know.
think as well. And
Yeah.
well, again, what's in a name? Polaris. So we have the North Pole Aris star, Pole Aristarchus, Pole
Yeah,
Aristarchus.
yeah.
Dude, you're
And let me
good.
say, let me say, because it's all scripted, right? So why not Aristarchus is given such a prominent
He
position
might
in
be.
history?
He might be the Antichrist, right? Aristarchus, that he created the heliocentric
Right.
universe, right? He spreaded it, right? Like he could be the fake savior, right? Like savior of the world. Yeah,
He's a destroyer in a sense. That's true because Aristarchus was destroyed. So what we are in is a fallen state. A fallen
yeah,
state. So Aristarchus is
inverted.
there to represent that. And let me just say, remember I said all craters on the moon, one crater,
Yeah,
revolutionary stuff, right? But the most mysterious crater on the moon, the most described as the most mysterious object in our universe, has been called, well, crater Aristarchus. Isn't that funny?
yeah,
So again,
yeah.
pointing us towards them. But remember, if the context is wrong, if you're a ball earther, you just, oh yeah, well that's pretty curious. But yeah, we know it's a rock in space, just part of tiny part of the greater universe. Whereas when it comes to flat Earth, and we know that with the ground is stationary, so everything moves in unison, or appears to move in unison on a daily, nightly basis. Well, then the context is different. So that they named it Aristarchus, our nearest neighbor, the most mysterious crater on it. Again, significant. Not the whole answer, but a pointer towards the
Well,
ultimate.
star. The word star itself, I mean, is interchangeable with angels, also.
Right.
So
Well,
like, you know.
S-Tar. A tar is an able-bodied seaman, and we're talking about actors. How about this? Antonio Subarats, who accused Patricia Steer of being a transgender, and a steer turns out to be a castrated bull calf. So all theatre, right? Subarats backwards is star or S-Tar I-B us. R-I star C-H us. So there's that significance. But
Oh my
I was
God.
going to point out his
So
great
so
friend,
so
Martin Levy,
basically,
right?
Dude, my
so
head's
basically.
hurting.
So basically, when you're talking about this Aristarchus thing, right? It's basically a representation of that we ourselves are so connected into reality. Like we are a huge variable to the how complicated things are created. Everything will be connected, and so you found Aristarchus being connected to everything. I can find that same thing in my life too.
Yes, you
Yeah.
have to. It's like,
Wow.
yes, you have to, man, because what
Yeah.
applies to you applies to me. The same story applies to all of us. Let me give you a few other pointers. Iron Man, Tony Stark, right? F.E. Man,
Mm,
Flat Earth Man. Game of Thrones, Game of Thorns, Game of Norths, main character Arya Stark. Um, I
mm-hmm.
mentioned the Beatles and Ringo Starr. So there's so many different pointers, but it's once again it's like a treasure hunt. It's playing clues are
Yeah.
there for everyone to find, and once you get to a certain point, you
Wow.
realize, and there's no telling anyone at the start of the treasure hunt. Do you know what I mean? Because they just won't get where you're at. Um,
Yeah,
Oh,
I've,
you
it's
got
I've,
to
deep.
start.
It's deep.
Yeah, you got to start at your own spot, you know,
right.
because everything that you're gonna uncode, decode has a lot to do with you, and the closer your connection is, the more you have to do with it. Like the more influence you have on that scenario. So
Right.
like it's just like in gematria, like if I live at 118 Stewart Street and I see a 118 in something, well I'm connected in some way. Like because of that 118 and my 118, we're connected some way. But whether that's a lot or a little, who knows, right?
Well,
Depending on how.
that's for you to decide,
Right.
Stephen.
Yeah.
Remember,
Yeah. Yeah.
all there's ever been in this life is you. That's all.
Right. Right. Right.
That's
Right.
all.
Yeah. Because you can only look from your point of view.
That's all.
Wow,
That's all.
man. I'll tell
And
you what, the creator of this world is amazing. That's for sure. Dear Heavenly Father, I turn to you today. I repent of all my sins. I believe that your Son, Jesus Christ, died on the cross for my sins and was resurrected to life on the third day. And forevermore he lives. Father, I ask of you to baptize me with the Holy Spirit right now. Change my heart and renew my spirit. I invite you, Jesus, to enter into my heart, change me, save me, and be the Lord of my life. Right now, in your mighty name, I pray. Amen.
Amen.